Glenn Twiddle here, and I am on the Nullarbor Plain of all places. As you can see, the road goes on forever. So this week, I went to my team and I said, bring from the archives the greatest pieces of advice from one of the finest real estate minds in Australia ever, and that's Phil Harris. So strap in for a blast from the past, a throwback, if you will, to the great man, one of the finest brains of systems, of tactics, of what to do to be successful in real estate, Phil Harris. Enjoy, folks.
You want the normal real estate training you've been told a million times? Make cold calls, knock on doors? Best be switching off now, because in this podcast we go out of the box using unknown tactics, primarily that the real estate industry's never heard of, in order to get you called in more often, convert those listings, and get more success without the painful cold calling. Listen up, we're in for a ride. This is Real Estate Renegades.
Hey, I did forget, before we get on to the great episode with Phil Harris's skill set, remember this episode and a whole bunch of episodes lately have been brought to you by Agent Prospecting. So if you do want to have the prospecting task, the actual arduous task of Facebook lead generation, of telemarketing, of all of those things that really most agents are either unable or unwilling to do, we either don't like it or we don't have the skill set to do it as real estate agents, to generate leads on Facebook, go through that learning curve, and the pain and arduous of the thing I hated myself when I was listing and selling, and that's telemarketing and cold calls. If you want all of that taken off your plate, then go to agentprospecting.com.au. That's agentprospecting.com.au. We'll have a chat. It's no obligation just to have a yarn to us, of course. We'll have a chat to you about how you can outsource your prospecting at a very, very high quality level. That's an appraisal or two every single day, and for less than the cost of even one staff member to do it. In fact, it's about a quarter of the cost of one staff member. So really, really affordable to take that painful task off your plate. That's agentprospecting.com.au. Now let's get on to, while I'm out here on the Nullarbor Plain, let's get to Phil Harris and that amazing skill set that I described to help you go to number one in your area. Here's Phil.
G'day folks, Glenn Twiddle here, and I'm with Icon, my mate, my freaking mentor. I've listened to so much of his training over the years. I've bought his programs through Lee Woodward. The guy, when it comes to most of the, I call him the cerebral assassin behind closed doors, because I've never yet someone who's really broken down the science, I suppose, of being a great top performing real estate agent than Phil Harris. My man, thanks for finding a bit of time for us, bud.
No, hey, thanks for flying down and coming to see me.
Mate, the least I could do. Well, every other time you fly to me, man, so I appreciate it's the least I could do, mate. But thanks for finding some time to catch up for our crew. So, as I said off camera, we haven't prepared, but when you're as good as you are, you don't have to get ready because you're always ready. So, I wanted to start, I suppose, with setting the context around in different areas of the country. We got different markets, but you know, WA's kind of been described as blood on the streets for a couple of years now. The eastern states have been pretty good, but there's some signs that they're heading into a slower market, and already there's panic because, heaven forbid, it's halted for a little bit of time. What if an agent is going into or in the middle of a struggling market? What are some of the things they can do, I suppose, with their brains that is going to help prepare them to be able to do what needs to be done?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, here in Adelaide, we've had a very consistent marketplace for, the best part of a decade. We've really seen, we haven't had the extreme price growth of what we've seen in Melbourne and Sydney, and then obviously Perth's been a challenging market. Hobart's been very aggressive over the last few years, but I mean, you've done a lot of study of John McGrath over the years.
As have you, yeah.
I never forget, hearing John speak, probably over a decade ago, saying there's two markets. There's the inner market and there's the outer market, right? So the outer market is, you pick up a newspaper, you can talk about interest rates, you can talk about property prices are struggling, you can talk about, property prices are going to drop by 10% this year, whatever it might be. But there is a reality behind that. If you go down to your Lands and Titles office, there will be a certain amount of 1,000 properties that will settle this calendar year in your marketplace. Now, whether they will get sold by you or not, that's a different conversation. Yeah. But there are going to be lots of people in your marketplace that will actually transact. So that outer market of actually, not buying into the negative stories of, and there's challenges, let's be realistic about it. It's a challenging market in some place around Australia. But the inner market is between your ears. and saying, what are the things that you need to do to pivot and to make some change? Because there's no point just doing what you did going back 2 or 3 years ago in a strong market. If it's a challenging market, there are certain things you've got to do. So that vendor management experience, that customer service experience, you've got to pivot and make some changes there to make sure that you can adapt and be and still be successful in any marketplace.
Yeah, I love it. And certainly what I love about, hanging out with blokes like yourself, I get to see the commonalities between legendary performers around the country. And I love it when I see things that you guys have all got in common. And literally that statement that you've just made, probably more articulate than some of my mates in this business, is certainly consistent amongst all of you guys, Let me throw this to you. I remember not so long back, I was with a student who was 9 months in the game and struggling a little bit. And I texted you and I texted Matt Steinwade and I said, hey, how'd you go in your first year? And I remember you texted me back saying, and I may get the stat wrong, but I think it was 1 listing in your first 6 months, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Tell us, I think we can learn as much from when we're winning as when we're struggling. What lessons did you learn from that first 6 months, literally, where it was, we didn't see signs of one of Australia's, most intelligent performers and respected entities within the real estate space that you've become? We didn't see signs of that in the first 6 months. Tell us about the lessons in the 6 months that led to you becoming this iconic performer that just has really nailed it.
Well, right. So I made one sale in my first 6 months. So it was pretty challenging. But I guess if I look back, there's a few things that come under that. One of the biggest, I think, challenges or struggles that new people have particularly coming into real estate is they don't understand there is a significant lag time in terms of doing the work, building relationships, putting the effort in before that will actually lead to success. So there's a couple of things. So I'd say first thing was that even though I only listed and sold one property in my first 6 months, I was very fanatical about doing things correctly in my marketplace. I built a lot of relationships. And I was always the agent because I was very young, I was 20 years of age at that stage as well. And I looked young and I spoke young, and so there's some things that weren't going for me. I was always the agent of people would ring and say, Phil, we thought you were lovely, but we've gone with somebody else.
Oh, bugger. And you don't get a little prize for second, do you?
No,
Damn it.
I was always that guy. So
okay.
I had plenty of those conversations. And then, so that would be the first thing. I was building a lot of relationships. I say in real estate, there's two things that govern success, right? Number one is skills. So you actually need to go ahead and get some skills. And the other is volume-based activity. So if you've got skills and you're doing the work, it's only a matter of time before you become successful. If you haven't got skills, but you're doing the volume, which is what I was doing in my first 6 months, right? You can be making 50 calls a day, door knocking 3 streets a day, great personal marketing, great personal promotion. But if you're doing the work but you haven't got the skills, you're not going to convert, right? So it's a combination of both. So great skills plus volume, I say, equals massive success. So I was putting in the work for that first 6 months, but I didn't have the skill set to convert. What happened in the back end of that 6 months, I went on and I sold close to 90 homes in that next 6 months. I went from to close to 100 deals.
Beautiful.
Is that I combined skill set with volume. So I went away, I learned some skills, I learned how to get a listing presentation, I learned how to do great buyer work, I learned the process of following people up and really just providing levels of customer service that most people hadn't really experienced. And I hate to say it, but today, customer service still isn't that great within the real estate space.
Agreed.
Yeah, and what is great customer service? It's getting back to people, it's doing what you say you're going to do, and if you can apply that and have faith, and that's where I think people struggle when they first start in real estate, is they lack the faith to go, hang on, I've got to do all of this work now, but I'm not going to get a reward on it for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 12 months time.
Yeah.
You speak to great operators like, whether it be James Toston, whether it be Tom Hector, these guys are chasing people 10, 15 years out.
Yeah.
I think I saw it, Eric, was it last year maybe, or the year before, I can't remember, where Alexander Phillips said someone was selling in 5 years. He said, that's on my hot list.
Yeah, that's right. Matt tells that story about the lemon.
Like someone who's 5 years away.
That's the hot list. That's a hot one.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, remember that story Matt was saying about the difference after 10 years of follow-up.
Yeah.
10 years of follow-up. If he hadn't have delivered a bloody lemon to this guy's fish and chips thing, he may not have got this listing. And then he sort of has this story, it's all about the lemon, after a decade of follow-up. So you're right about that. I call it the future bank.
And it's also, I find with a lot of great agents that I know, most great agents seem to have a breakthrough moment where things changed for them. you know, and I call that, I talk to my team about that kind of life-changing listings. I remember when I first started, I was 20 years of age, where I'm out there prospecting. I keep losing listings, keep losing, but you do something extraordinary, whether it be dropping off the lemon, whether it be, I don't know, getting, you know, swinging by and appraising your home at 10 o'clock at night. But there's something that starts a domino effect on your career, and it starts to happen for you. So I went from having one listing to 80 listings in the following 6 months because we hit this kind of critical momentum and I was away. But it took a whole lot of work and faith to build up to that particular point.
I remember hearing your story, and it was possibly an interview with Lee, and then it led to the Urban Words program, where you were meticulous with your language. I thought there is no one with a better handle of the words that can convert than that particular program. So certainly be worth your time digging that one up, guys. But what are some, was that for you? Was it just the getting the words in the right space? Was that 6-month critical moment for you? Because it certainly seemed to be the thing that got my attention from you way back when. It was probably 10 years ago.
I think, look, I mean, getting the words right was probably a part of it. I think it was more about getting my own personal brand right. And I think the words form a part of the personal brand. But, you know, I look back and I laugh now. I look at myself as a 20-year-old. I looked young. I had bad hair. I wasn't wearing a suit jacket. I wasn't dressed appropriately. I mean, I didn't have any money at that stage. I was kind of borrowing a car. I just wasn't packaged right. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
And I think for a lot of salespeople out there, like the margin between being incredibly successful versus just struggling or being average or getting out of the industry, people don't realise how close they are to being incredibly successful, but it takes some slight change. And so it's not necessarily one key thing that made a difference. But when all of a sudden John McGrath says preparation is free, right? So when I started to prepare properly for all of my appraisals, I wanted to walk into a room and make sure that I was the most prepared compared to any other agent. More data, more information, all of those sorts of things. I wanted to be dressed immaculately. I wanted to have the words that came out of my mouth. I might have been 20, but I wanted to sound like a 38-year-old that had been selling for 20 years, you know? So that these were the sorts of things that when it was the sum of all of those things that made a big difference. And so those things kind of came together after a certain period of time, and then the results, you know, they were phenomenally different in that short period of time. So it wasn't one particular thing, but it was a combination of a lot that brought it all together.
Is there anything, because that those levels of skill, there'll be some younger folk out there that'll be watching this, they'll be sitting there going, shit, I'm 20. Is it actually possible that I can too? You know, but there'll be something in some people's heads. Certainly would have been in my head, man. My 20s, I just drank bourbon and played guitar for my 20s. You know, I certainly wouldn't have even been open to the fact that I could have been a successful, perhaps even 7-figure performer. What would you say to the 20-year-old with stars in his eyes and sees some of these guys doing amazingly well? Are the odds against them, or is it a formula that literally anyone can do if they put in those pieces of the puzzle together?
I think that no question the odds are against them if they choose for the odds to be against them, right? So if you want to be a 20-year-old incredibly successful at real estate, you've got to make some choices. So I knew that when I was 21, I'd be in bed on a Friday night at 8:30 where all of my mates would be down the pub doing what 21-year-olds do on a Friday night.
What I was doing.
Yeah, correct. And so everything, you know, every upside comes at a cost. So I guess you've probably got to really work out as a 20-year-old, if you're serious about having a real estate career, can you be successful? Absolutely. There's no reason now, with the amount of training that's available, right, the opportunity that's out there, but you're going to have to make some sacrifice in your life. And so for me, when my mates were, you know, sleeping into midday on a Saturday, I was out there doing, you know, 5 or 6 open homes in the morning, then doing my boss's open homes in the afternoon, and then I was getting myself educated, and then I was trying to, you know, save some money to buy a nicer suit and save some money to buy a car. Like, that's how serious and committed I was. So I think for the 20-year-old who's out there who's watching, yeah, there are no excuses. You can be successful in a very short period of time, but you need to get your priorities in life and work out what you want to do.
Yeah, wow. I mean, inspiring stuff. So does that, actually, let me throw that in, because there's an ongoing debate, and I happen to be on one side of the debate, and in the rest of my life, I used to be on the other side of the debate, and that's around this work-life balance and staying sane during a run like that, where it feels like, I mean, I know the run that I've had to do to even be half mentioned in the same breath as a Lee Woodward or a Tom Panos or a Matt Steinwade. You know, literally, I've always thought to myself that I don't deserve to be there, but I just got up at 3 a.m. and worked till midnight in order to outwork them, in order to be even worthy to be mentioned in the sentence. Where do you sit on the work-life balance ongoing debate that's out there?
Well, I think work-life balance is nonsense to me. It depends on what your definition of balance is. I mean, I focus more on life priorities, right? So what's your prioritisation? So for me, I don't have an interest in having this ultimate balanced lifestyle where I start work at 9, I finish at 5, and I get to watch Netflix at 5:30. That has zero interest to me. But so I guess my life is weighted in certain areas where I put priorities. So I put massive priorities around my family, around my physical health and fitness, around my well-being, around my business life, around my mental life, around my spiritual life. Those sorts of things have a far greater weighting, if that makes sense. But I think that where kind of life balance got out of control for a lot of people is I'm not interested in having this normal 9 to 5 balanced lifestyle. That has no appeal to me.
Yeah.
So some people might say, maybe my life is unbalanced compared to some people, but what are you comparing it to?
Yeah, and I suppose, I mean, the way I look at it, maybe we're just, it's easy for us to pat each other on the back because literally we both have a similar outlook on that. But I just think when I do try and have balance and go, I sit in a beat, I'm bored within an hour. What do I want to do? Go and look at a marketing piece, because I'd do it for free. If there was no money in what I do, I would literally do it for free. So, there might be some elements of it that I'd pay someone else to do, but it's kind of like, when I retire, I'll be doing this, so I'm never going to retire. And maybe that's it. Yeah. Maybe that's it, finding something that literally fires you up.
It's about just finding what your priorities are, and if you're passionate about it and you enjoy it. So, like you, I come to work because I love it. And I love the opportunity to build things and to build people and help people, and it's an opportunity to serve and grow and all of those sorts of things. Then I've got my family. I've got my life these days, my life is, people are surprised at how simple and boring my life probably is. Where I really have my family, I have my business and health and well-being, and they're kind of, I'm drastically unbalanced in those areas because that's where I put all my energy and all my focus.
Yep, got it. What are some of the things you've seen that are, from the guys you've directly mentored, like a Tom Hector, and some of the guys you've built? Are there any of the commonalities in this space that you've seen that you would draw, our more, because being such a transient industry, probably half the people plus seeing this weren't at, some of the stuff we've done before. Yeah. So what are some of those commonalities you've seen in the Tom Hectors that you've identified as, if you've got a couple of those things and don't have a couple of things of the people you've seen get in with all the good intentions who get out of the industry, are there any that spring to mind in this space?
Zero excuses and a massive desire to grow. That's the only part of the formula that I feel we haven't been able to master yet.
So desire, we can't install it.
We can't, So I know people that work here in our organisation, we can show you a process that starts at A and finishes Z, and if you follow that process, you will be a successful agent. The only blockage that comes in between of that is, do they not have the desire to actually go out and execute it every single day? So the best operators we see across Australia, where there's a will, they will find a way. And the best operators I work with, they've got zero interest in getting there slowly. They want it to happen tomorrow. Yeah. So they're not reinventing the wheel. They're like, if I've got to get my listing presentation right, who's got the best listing presentation? Let me go and get half an hour with that person. Who's got the best business plan? I don't need to spend the next 3 weeks building a business plan. Let me copy Matt Steinway's business plan because that'll work for him, right? Yep. If I want to, be a master at prospecting, okay, if James Tostovan, what does he do for a call session each and every single morning? I'll jump on a plane, I'll pay the fee, and I'll go and watch James, and I'll get it done.
I've done that. Me and Chris Gilmore went down, and we it was a mutual one, but we sat there, and he was asking us some questions, which was an honour. What the bloody hell's he asking me anything for? But we were there to watch the master at work.
So that's the common thread, and so I think that with all the real estate training we see out there today, everything is on, this is how to and this is what you should do. I'm not sure that's the right way of coming at it though now. My question to most people is, why are you not doing what you should be doing?
Yeah.
And if you can unlock that, that's where the success that lies behind that. What's the blockage? Because, not to overcomplicate it and sound arrogant about it, but the reality is if you want to be successful in this business, you need to wake up and feel good about yourself every single morning, come into the office by about 8 o'clock, have a meeting with an agenda, jump on the phone and ring your vendors for half an hour, from 8:30 to 11:30, prospect and make 20, 30, 40 prospecting telephone calls, spend an hour before lunch getting ready for the afternoon, and every afternoon get face-to-face with 4 or 5 people who think of saying yes to buying or selling, and you will be incredibly successful. And that hasn't changed in the last 18 years since I've been doing this.
Yeah.
Right? So if we know that that's the recipe and that's the formula that works, why are people not doing that? Yeah, and if you can unlock that in your life as to why you're not doing those activities, then you will be successful. Now, typically, if you scratch below the surface and you start looking at why you're not doing it, it comes back to, as you said.
Oh, I'm busy, Phil.
I'm busy, or I feel like I don't deserve it, or I feel like my self-esteem, or I've got problems at home, or I didn't get good sleep last night, I haven't got good energy. Like, these are the things that get in the way of people executing every single day. So, most high performers are not necessarily any better at selling real estate than what the average performer is. It's just that great performers do it every day. So rather than being really good on a Monday or a Tuesday, great performers back it up Monday to Friday, right? So, of the course of a 5-day working week, they get 4.5 of those days were really good at an 8 or 9 out of 10, whereas the average performer only does it for 1 day per week. Because the actual formula is not that hard, but you've just got to be relentlessly consistent.
Yeah, wow. I remember when I was studying and I wore his VHS tapes paper thin, because I used to have a video player that you push play on the VHS, and when it got to the end, it'd rewind it and push play again. Right? I had a little button. So I used to put Michael Sheargold on, push play all night, and just wear out his stuff. And so it got in. And I remember he was saying he did a study where he found the average dollar productivity across Australia of dollar productive hours was between 8 and 12 hours a week. So you could do 1 day. There's your day done. If you want to be average, do your 8 or 12 hours in a day and then go to the beach.
It's just basic things. But, it's staggering to think that the average real estate agent couldn't make 20 outbound prospecting calls per day.
Yeah.
Like when you break that down, that's 20 a day, 100 a week. It's not that big a commitment to play at that level.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Because I know this had a profound impact in me, sort of incrementally improving. And that moment you talk about for me was 2013 when I was asked this question. It was, what would your goals be if you couldn't fail? And then another mentor asked me the same question, what would your goals be if you weren't afraid? Right? And only at that moment, with the safety of those caveats, did I actually set the real goal. You know what I mean? Because everything up until then, I would have set a goal that I think I might be okay with getting, not the goal I actually would want for myself. And then it all changed for me. It was from 2013, it's gone through the roof. I'm living the life of my dreams now. How would you see it? I'd love your take on the setting of goals and how that might be the fuel, perhaps, or not, for that energy. You say we can't install desire. Is that because we're not chasing something that really burns us?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people do have those kind of self-limitations that they place on themselves, and whether they inherited that as children or things happen to us all along the journey, and so sometimes it comes back to that self-identity and that self-value. So if people are stuck in this, well, I don't deserve it and I couldn't feel good about myself, and they put those kind of limiting performance beliefs into life. But as people progress and learn to break through those, starting off with smaller goals and then continuing to progress towards them. But ultimately it comes down to putting some basic strategies in place. Like if you put a sensible goal, now without getting crazy about it, but if there's a real estate agent out there who's watching this today and they say, look, I want to write $1 million per year, like not arrogantly, but that's a pretty simple conversation to get someone to $1 million in fees. Like whiteboard and a pen for 5 or 10 minutes ago, well, let's break that down.
Break the numbers down.
Yeah, what do the numbers look like? Well, in my marketplace, okay, there's an average fee of 10 grand. I'd have to write 100 grand per month, okay? That means we've probably got to list about 11 or 12. It means we've probably got to make about 10 sales per month, okay? How are we going to list 11 properties? Well, let's look at the prospecting opportunities that are out there. There's my personal brand and social. I could go and get market share in a service area. I could get 2 or 3 listings per month out of my service area or buyer management. I'm going to get some repeat and referral companies. I'm going to, in the space of 5 or 10 minutes, you could break it down, right? We'll go, hang on, well, that looks pretty simple, right? We go, yeah, it is. Okay, well, let's go another level below that again. Why are we not doing that behaviour? Oh, well, I don't this, I don't that. Okay, let's go a layer below that. What would happen if we did start doing that behaviour? And then what you start to realise is that if you adjust your behaviour and give yourself permission to go after these things and you break it down, most of the goals for real estate agents to achieve is not that complicated at all. Yeah. And it all comes back to those 4 or 5 fundamental things that we spoke about and being relentlessly consistent in the way that you go about it.
Wow, because you're right, mate, is that, I'm embarrassed to say that I've got a job going through that process with people. Where literally one of the first things I do with a coaching client, what's the average fee, how much you want to earn? And the hardest part I've ever got is having someone literally kind of say, right, when you write $1 million in fees, what's that's going to mean to you? You know what I mean? Like literally, what are you going to do with your cut of that? Because that's kind of the anaesthetic or whatever for when it's painful. At 10 in the morning, you get told to F off or whatever by one of those 20 calls, or whatever the case may be.
But it's also the process of, not many people understand the process of actually, reading goals regularly, if not on a daily basis, and not just having goals. What's the strategy behind it? What do you need to do? Rather than most people's goals, I think, are more wishes.
Oh yeah, for sure. Most people, I ask them, I asked someone the other day, what would your goals be? Oh, do a bit better. Yeah, like more? More's not a goal in my head.
But any goal without a strategy is just a wish, and it's probably not going to come to fruition. But if you've got a clear plan in front of you and it's documented and you look at it on a, I'm looking at my goals, at least every single day, once if not twice. Right? That's what keeps you aligned, and that's what makes it all possible.
Yeah, right. That's a right, me gang. That's a right, me. For that year where I kind of put it all on the line, like every penny I had, a whole bunch of pennies I didn't have, called every client that I had and said, hey, Chris, you know that money you pay me every month? I need a decade in advance, because it was all like literally every minute of every day I was focused on that outcome because it was just a whole new level. It's crazy, but I suppose that's it. When you do put it out there and you get a plan in place of what it's going to take, then that's what you've got to do. Let me ask you this around team building, because I've had a bunch of people that have gone to that next level. They've gone to from maybe where they started at 100 grand GCI, where they were barely making the industry award rate after fees and splits and things. 100 GCI maybe works out at 40 grand a year or something. They get to that 250, 300, and they start to think leverage. They start to think team. As someone who is a scientist when it comes to this business, what's your take around team building, order of hiring, what they do, and any of your insights that some of us who haven't built the teams that you've built, what would you say?
Well, I guess I can only speak from experience of the teams that I work with and seeing people have had great success in running teams. Probably one of the first observations, most people that go to a team environment start with, generally there's a few train wrecks along the way. So if you're kind of watching now and you've been through that's not unusual. And typically what happens is that a salesperson gets to that 250, 300 in GCI, okay, I want to grow a team. So first thing they do, they go to a conference, they get pumped up, they go, okay, I should put on a PA or whatever they want to do, right? But then not enough thought goes into, if I am going to put on another team member, if you're in chaos, there's only one thing worse than you being in chaos, having two people in chaos. And that's generally the career path of how it starts, right?
I'm only giggling, man, because that's literally, I've seen that in my world. And
So we go from one person who's kind of a bit of a loose cannon to now two loose cannons, and then we wonder why it doesn't work. And so before I came down to see you now, I was literally upstairs half an hour ago talking to Tani in our HR department here around putting somebody into a team. And we go very slowly around that process now, right? Very, very slowly. So there's a couple of things I would say. First thing is that is a total shift in mindset for a salesperson. I'd even get away from calling it a personal assistant. I'd say it's either a co-agent or a professional assistant, whatever it might be. But the psychology, you've got to move from being an operator to a leader. It's about a leadership role. And so people that do well with assistants, if we're going to call it that for lack of a better word, are people that are providing longevity and career paths for people coming into that role. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if somebody is joining you, you need to be providing them with an opportunity to say, hey, what does your career path look like over the next 3 to 5 years, and mapping that out. So if we're both aligned to this vision, then there's more loyalty, we know what we're doing. So first thing is around that leadership role. Secondly is making sure you've got a really clear documented business plan. Now in that business plan, when you employ someone, there should be a very clear list of standards, right? This is when our soul stickers go up. This is when our pre-list kits go up. This is when our gifts go out. This is how we run our open homes. This is how we do our callbacks. Now if you haven't got that, don't dare put somebody on. Because if you don't know what you're doing, how can you honestly expect for somebody to come on and actually do it to your standard, right? So that's where I see most people go wrong. Number one, not understanding the leadership capacity. And leadership, if without getting too clever about it, ultimately is about serving other people, right? So if you put somebody on, your mindset now shifts to, tell me about you, Glenn. If you're coming to work with me, what are your goals? What are your aspirations? Where do you want to be? And how can I help you get there? Okay, right, now I understand that. Let me put a career path in place for you. Now let me take you through my business plan. Go away and read that. Let me take you through the standards. And the best way to manage people is to manage the standard, not the person. I really like you as a person, Glenn, but we've got a clear set of standards that say soul sticker's got to go up the day of unconditional. That wasn't done today. Yeah? What's the issue? Does that make sense?
Oh, perfectly. I'm sitting there with my business going, I need Phil as a mentor in that space, because I've been guilty of what many salespeople are guilty of, not doing that.
Yeah. So stop winning it. And so rather than kind of you getting upset with somebody because they can't read your mind, right? Like how they meant to read your mind.
Yeah, I get it, mate.
Let's actually have a playbook. And so our teams that I work with, so most of my time is spent coaching people in team environments here, and we are constantly looking at how do we improve our standards, how do we grow the people within that team, and really that the head salesperson now, they're a coach as well, and they're looking to serve and grow and build those people in that environment as well.
Wonderful, mate. I tell you, I'm going to be rewatching this bit, you know that, and if Naomi's watching this, she'll be sitting there going, you listen to him, Glenn, he's right. You do that, you do. Because very guilty, mate. Because I wonder if though, mate, let me throw this to you. I know I have to do that. I've probably known I should be doing that for a period of time. Is the skill set or the natural predisposition to be, you know, me, and you've kind of gotten to know me, you know, gregarious and kind of bit people focused as opposed to task focused, you know. Can even someone who's like that, who in the, you know, the disc profiling thing that is the extroverted people person, can that person discipline themselves to do that? Because I'm sitting there going, I need to do that. Am I gonna? I'm sitting here now saying I'm gonna, but is there any excuse?
Well, I don't think there is. I mean, I think it's just a decision whether you want to be professional in that particular space, if you like, or not.
It's true.
Yeah. But let's face it, you can't scale chaos.
Yeah.
You know, so if you go, okay, you know, everyone goes to kind of the McDonald's as the example, but yeah, okay, from now on, there's no checklist, there's no process at McDonald's. We're just going to kind of try and throw it all together, and hopefully we can serve a Big Mac, fries and a Coke, and it comes out in under 3 minutes. I mean, it's just not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that if you haven't got a great skill set in documenting process and procedure and checklist, we'll get somebody to do it for you. Or we said, don't waste your time reinventing the wheel. Get a copy of somebody else's business plan, then modify it for yourself. But one of the biggest things I'm teaching the teams that I work with is that you're building scale and you're building process and you're building a system, not just for the people that are currently working for you, but what happens when your buyer manager leaves you in 3 years' time?
Yeah, got
Are you
it.
going to spend the next 3 years retraining and going again?
Yeah.
Or have you actually got a system where you can plug and play?
Hand it to them.
Yeah. So the wake-up call for salespeople across Australia now is that the game has changed. There is a bigger gap that's starting to occur between the good agents and the average is going like that. It's getting wider and wider and wider.
Yeah.
Okay? People are now getting very serious about putting structured plans in place, having proper job descriptions, having proper workflows, having proper meetings, having learning educational programs in place for all of their team members, and just having a much more professional approach to running teams. And that's what's occurring. So when you're seeing these people that are writing, you know, these absurdly big numbers, it's not by chance. They are literally their own business within the business structure, and they're all running from an operating system.
Absolutely. I mean, in the last week, literally last week, I mean, how blessed am I that, you know, I look at the commonalities of yourself, and everything you've said, it literally described the behaviours of Matt Steinway, James Tosterman, Marcus Chiminello and Vivian Yap, all of them. And they're all doing about that $400,000-$600,000 in fees a month.
A month, it's scary, yeah.
So, yeah, and literally they are following the Phil Harris playbook as you've just described it. One thing that is, it's relatively new, even to some of these higher performers, and some more than others are embracing it at various speeds, but everyone's embracing it. I'd love your take on how these things that are all within an arm's length for most of us, and that's our mobile devices and our phones. You know, me and some of my guys have been singing this little, you know, song for some years now. It's almost becoming, though, it's the main media of attention that the world is focused on, as opposed to just one of many. What's your take on how mobile devices, phones, etc., and how your guys, or how you're instructing your guys to be marketing to the community, glaring at a phone?
The thing with social, 100% I think it's important, right? So
yeah, I met your social media full-time person here.
There's nothing revolutionary there. I think it's very dangerous though, for salespeople, that it doesn't become a distraction to doing the lead generation work. So it's a part of the strategy, it's not the entire strategy. And that's where the industry has always been fundamentally distracted by shiny stuff.
Yeah.
To get a salesperson to sit there for 90 minutes and do 90 minutes of calls has always been hard work.
Yeah.
Now we've got more and more layers of complexity to take their eye off of the ball away from that prospecting piece, right? So my take on social is, and I'm not the expert, you are, I don't personally play hugely in that space because I'm not out there selling property like other agents are.
Got it.
So we've got plenty of corporate social and all of those sorts of things. But I do know now that for our top guys, it's an important part of the strategy. It's very educational, right?
So they're not just out there saying, hey, I'm Tom Hector, call me to sell.
Correct.
They're being smarter than that.
Correct. Yeah. So I'm not the expert there, but I can say it's an important part of it, but it's a balanced part. And all of those names that you've just mentioned, Matt Steinway, James Tostovan, Vivian Yap, Marcus Chiminello, the Tom Hectors, they have all got good social, right? But there is still a massive engine that's driving those businesses.
1000%, yeah. What's your take on the speed of success? I mean, every one of those folks, I'm just thinking back to them, like Matt said he didn't hit his numbers till about the 10-year mark, same as Mr. Tostovan. Aaron Shiner said he didn't really start hitting his stride till 5 years. You hit yours relatively quickly. What's your take on how fast someone can start performing if they really put their mind to it?
Well, I think now, I think it used to be more of a gradual progression. This is kind of, let's say, pre-social days, right? It would take you about 10 years of relationships to gradually build up and meet the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker in the local area. You know, you become that traditional real estate model. Even, you know, pre-social, nobody's ever really run database efficiently anyway.
That's correct.
So like,
even then,
it took a while. So I built up my career in a pre-social era, but that was I was big on data and I was big on making calls.
Yeah.
Right, and huge on word of mouth referral. That's how I built my personal brand. I think we're in a stage now, the amount of education that's available with people like yourself and other trainers, the lack of resource is not the issue now.
Yeah, it's true.
So really what it comes down to is the ability to implement and the desire to make it happen. So I think now to become great at real estate is probably a 1 or 3 year burn, whereas before it's probably a 3 to 5 year burn, like what you were suggesting. So time is not an issue now. We're seeing more and more stories of people who are bobbing up going, first year in real estate, wrote 500 grand.
Yeah.
Like first year, I heard someone the other day, something ridiculous, someone wrote $1 million.
Brent Baston in Tauranga in New Zealand, he came to one of our conferences. He bought Chris Gilmore's system, implemented it flawlessly. He did a bit of coaching stuff with me in that first year and did $1 million in his first year.
That's bizarre.
It was right place, right time, because his town had never seen anything like what we do, I suppose.
Yeah.
But he still did the work. This is taking nothing away. It was right place, right time, but right guy. But young guy, he's set $2 million in his second year.
That's bizarre.
Mate,
It's crazy numbers. So we're seeing more and more of that. But I guess typically speaking, what I see the people here, it's normally about a 2-year play before we start to see people starting to get results in terms of becoming, you know, standalone viable real estate agents. But it doesn't take 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows where real estate will be in 10 years' time?
It's true.
Right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. How do you guys have and again, because we didn't prep any of this, I'm just sort of shooting the hip, but one of the challenges a few of the guys are going is the discount agents, the third-party lead generators who are asking for 20, 30, up to 50% of the money to generate the lead. Yeah. And at a recent event I did, I generated some leads literally while the seminar was on, and I started handing out, you know, leads to these folks. But literally, if I handed out that lead and I just said, you know, buy me a bourbon next time we're at the bar, and I said, by the way, if one of those companies did that for you, how much would they have charged you? They'd sheepishly go $3,000, you know, because they're charging 20% for some of these things, you know. So what's your take around the pressure on fees, whether it's through a discounter or whether it's through someone else kind of wanting a little slice?
Well, the pressure on fees has really only come through lack of relationships in the marketplace. And so there's still a cross-section of people that are kind of hanging on to the glory days of, oh, you know, I sold that. I can't believe that person didn't come back to me. Like, I sold their home 13 years ago. Yeah. We went to school together and everything, you know, like all that type of conversation.
I saw a whinge on Facebook the other day. Oh, actually, no, it was a while back now. I quote, I'm really cranky. My client listed with someone else. I mean, you get the words there. My client. Like, someone forgot to tell the client, clearly.
Debate that. And so what's happening now is like, that's a classic example where someone goes, look, I sold their home 9 years ago. Okay, well, tell me, what have you done to maintain contact with that person over the 9 years? Haven't done anything, right? Then you take a 24-year-old kid who rings them every 3 months for the last 4 years, sends them, market update reports, rings them every time the property's listed and sold on their street, invites them to a few then all of a sudden, like, that relationship is just being superseded, right? So there's a direct correlation in the marketplace between agents that get high fees and also strength of relationship, right? So if you've got a problem with fees in your marketplace, predominantly speaking, it's because you've got a lack of relationship in your market.
Yeah.
So agents have got good contact plans in place. They have got good communication. They're communicating with people 9 to 15 times per year. They're adding value. They are traditionally still getting better fees. Now, does that mean they're immune to bad fees? No. Sometimes you've got to be commercial and say, hey, all right, if I'm going to take it from that lead generation company, you're going to have to pay the 20%. Suck it in and do it, or if you don't like it, don't take the lead on board, right? But as I said, the immunity to fees come back to strength of relationship in your marketplace. So all these great agents, some James Toss and Matt Stolling, yeah, sure, they've got to compete on certain properties. There's a whole heap of other properties they walk into as well, where somebody slides the keys across the table and says, hey,
get it done.
You sold my last 4 properties, can you take care of this one? Sure, no worries.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Right, so it's kind of, I get it, fees are coming back, I get it, but traditionally speaking, great agents are still doing well in their market.
Yep, no, agreed 100%, mate.
Not without effort.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah. You mentioned it before about personal brand. Now, I see your corporate brand very well positioned in the marketplace, but I've also seen Phil Harris on the set of a movie with Anthony LaPaglia, so certainly you're no stranger to Phil Harris being a brand, or Tom Hector, or any of your guys. Where do you see that play of how a personal brand builds supported by a corporate brand? Where do you see those two entities?
Well, I think the model is completely flipped, and I think it's agent first and agency second. That's only my opinion. So what does that mean? Does that mean that agents can go rogue and just do whatever they want? No, I'm not saying that at all, but I have an absolute fundamental belief that the consumer, if they're selling a home, they want to deal with Glenn Twiddle, right? And you're actually not fussed whether Glenn works at Harris or this organisation or the one down the road, right? So massive believer that real estate is becoming even more personal. So people want to deal with people, not with companies, right? So my take on it is that it's your personal brand and you need to build that and you need to protect that. My role as the agency is to put incredible infrastructure around you with resources of technology, marketing, branding, training, all of those sorts of things that provide a platform so you can go out there and achieve the goals that you want to achieve. So before, the old model was, I think it was agency first, and agencies will go out there and market the agency and call for free appraisals and whatever it might be. I think it's now flipped. We provide the resource and you guys are out there as the face of the brand, but with making sure we've got good rules in place to make sure we're all protecting the brand and doing the right thing.
Yeah, and having industry best practice so that we're not just going on what we think might be a good idea, but what is a good idea through proven processes.
100%.
Yeah, it's like, mate, I love it. And I'd love to finish on this. It was, and it's not the thing I thought of before, bugger. But you and I are both massive fans of the great John McGrath. I mean, literally, his book, You Don't Have to Be Born Brilliant, is probably the reason I'm still in real estate. Because when they gave us that book as required reading when I started, I was like, thank God, because I'm not. But, but You Inc., it sounds like you're really embodying within that principle you just mentioned, the principle that John said in that book, that the brand at the bottom of the sign, i.e. the person, is more important than the brand at the top of the sign, i.e. the company. What's some of your favourite lessons you've got from arguably the greatest real estate identity that we've had in this country, in John McGrath, certainly one of the most influential in my career? What's some of your favourite takeaways from that man?
Yeah, certainly hasn't been anyone like John. We'll probably wait a long time to see somebody else like
I've described you as the next best thing, as far as your ability to take what he does and implement it in a business. Yeah, you're a rare case, mate.
We're all fighting for a distant second, but well, I think it does come down to legitimately everything starts with you, and that's what the moral of that story is. It starts with you, and then everything builds out from there. But the people that I find in this business who do incredibly well, and by the way, you've got to look at what's the definition of doing incredibly well. I think there's agents who can go and do a good year or a good 2 or a good 3, but the great ones, I think, are the ones who are going to be at the top of their game for 3, 4, 5 decades.
Yeah.
Right?
Agreed.
I think longevity is a massive part in any industry, not real estate. I admire people that can go the journey. Right?
Ditto.
So, and the only way you can do that is if you're authentic to who you are. So there's no point having this kind of version of you that, you know, if the way I'm talking to you today and communicating, this can't just be an on-camera thing, or it can't be, oh, when I'm at work today, I'm going to have integrity between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. and then outside of that I'm going to have this kind of different lifestyle. So it's very much a lifestyle of who you are as a person, and then growing from that. I think the other thing as well, in your career, I made a decision very early in my career that there seems to be 2 types of agents in Australia. Those that are willing to share, who just want to make it a better industry legitimately and not just talk it, but say, hey, okay, you want to come and share some ideas? Like, you come in here today, we'll show you the whole shop, right? What you want to see, you'll see it.
Yeah,
right?
you've always been, as has John. There's the book.
So there's that side of the industry, or the other side is, no, you're a competitor, I'm going to keep everything to myself and play a smaller game. So I think that a couple of fundamental things, it starts with you living an authentic life and then going out and sharing that. Secondly is sharing as much information as you possibly can. And the third key thing I would say is that if you want to grow yourself, the best thing you can do is learn to try and grow others. So if you want to become a great salesperson, learn to teach other salespeople. If you want to get a great listing presentation, book yourself in 3 weeks' time to deliver the training session in your office on how to do a listing presentation. You will never work so hard in the 3 weeks. Like, even I know myself, I'm coming to speak for you at a conference, or it might be if I'm speaking on listing or prospects, like, it forces me to go away and recalibrate and reinvent. Because I have a philosophy that I don't want to be a phony or a fraud. Anything I want to talk about, I want to be either doing it myself or make sure it's in my life. And so there are a few basic things that I kind of picked up on the journey along the way.
Yeah, no, ditto, mate. Well, mate, I would just say to anyone who's watching this, put this on repeat. Edit out any of my ramblings and just cut Phil out and put it on repeat and listen to it daily, and you will not be doing yourself a favour. Break down the more cerebral kind of step-by-step stuff, and then the attitudinal stuff. Just get that man's brain in your head, get that man's words in your brain. You'll be doing yourself a favour. Sir, I can't thank you enough for finding a bit of time for us here today.
No, my pleasure. Thanks
mate,
for coming.
You've been inspiring, mate. As far as that, you mentioned the longevity of the game. I get accused sometimes of, rolling out the same speakers over and over again, but I, like yourself, there's certain of you guys that literally have lived the game for a decade plus. Why would I go to the newest kid on the block? Let's wait 3 or 4 years till he's achieved some of the stuff you have. So, mate, I can't thank you enough, mate. It's been an honour as a mate. It's been an honour as an observer, as a student of yours. Can't thank you enough for finding a bit of time for us here today, mate.
Anytime. Thanks.
All right. Until next time, folks. Bye for now. Good luck implementing that.
Wow. Well, there you go. Hope you liked the episode. If you like that, then what you need to do is you need to subscribe. You need to get more of this craziness, because we got more are coming. I'm never standing still, and we've got so many more guests. We've got so many more strategies, more out-of-the-box thinking. So if you haven't subscribed, literally, you're like throwing away thousands of dollars. Because I tell you, if you haven't subscribed, you don't come back. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to find you, I'm going to market to you, and I'm going to charge you for the very stuff that on this podcast we give away for free. So whack that subscribe button on whatever your favourite podcast weapon of destruction is, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.